I'm sure it's only going to get busier as the season ramps up. Can you kind of just walk us through what a normal couple of months before training camp would be like for you and for the staff, as opposed to what it's actually been like?
I'll start with what happens for the first couple months, like after the draft. And so with that, prior to COVID, you had, rookies would normally come in and free agents 2 weeks out after the draft. So starting like early May for a rookie kind of mini camp. And then you'd have kind of OTAs starting after that. And then really they're for the coaches, the trainers, the staff, the coaches have about almost a month off after OTAs for them to kind of get recharged and reinvigorated and kind of get ready for the season. And then most everybody reports kind of second, third week of July, really third week of July for kind of their physicals. And then the whole team's kind of ramped up and done their physicals by the end of July. And really from a coach's standpoint, especially when you start talking about the trainers and support staff, I mean, the month of end of June to beginning of July is kind of like a rest and recuperative. And really it's kind of been anything but that. All the support staff's been, really for the last 3 months trying to do all these things to make our facility safer and get everything ready for players, and haven't really been able to rest. They've been working pretty hard to try to get everything ready. So instead of kind of recharging the batteries, you've got a bunch of support staff, trainers, athletic trainers with therapists and equipment managers and all the logistics that goes with preparing for a season. Those guys haven't been resting and preparing all that much. They've really just been racing around to try to get this season to actually happen.
And so now this week is upon us, where the team's reporting today. As we speak, Mickey Loomis is having his sort of camp introductory press conference right now. What are, as best you can tell us, the protocols this week for the players arriving in New Orleans? So, like, let's say it's player Drew Brees, who's in San Diego. He's just hypothetically, he gets to New Orleans, and what?
Well, I'll start with, some of the teams had already had players report before the final signed deal and agreed upon deal between the NFLPA and the NFL. I mean, the two teams that start the season on the Thursday night, I think it was Kansas City and the Texans, they had already started camp before, or at least the rookies had already reported before the agreed upon deal had been struck. For the Saints, I think what's happened this week is, we want to make sure that everybody that's coming in has been tested per the protocol. Hey, look, we need to make sure they've had at least 2 or I think it's 3 tests before coming into the facility, showing that they're COVID negative. And so this week, quote unquote, if rookies report, they're really reporting for testing. You get tested, wait a day, get another test, make sure those are 2 negative, and then 24 hours before you walk in the facility, get another test, and then you do your physicals on Friday for all the rookies and the injured players, and then the following day would be the rest of the veterans that are coming in, like Drew Brees. But, it's really a situation where there's a lot of testing that goes on before you even get to really see the players and check on the players and really start any type of the conditioning program that they're going to be doing next week.
Chip Bankston's with us, Dr. Chip Bankston of the Baton Rouge Orthopedic Clinic. He's also the Saints team physician. Saints are arriving today, and they're set to begin all these protocols that Doc's laying out for us here. For you and your staff, normally through rookie minicamp and OTAs and things like that, I would assume you could probably handle a lot of physicals and things like that for these guys. We know none of that happened this offseason through free agency and everything. So what does that mean for you and your staff this week and leading into camp as you try to check off boxes that likely are normally checked months in advance?
Yeah, well, so before anybody steps on the field for some type of participation, even if it's OTAs or rookie minicamp, everybody gets a physical, and it's not just an orthopedic exam. It's internal medicine doctors, they've got dentists there, vision doctors, cardiac evaluations, and lots of blood work and blood tests, EKGs, and now all those things are known. if there's somebody, this player that was a free agent that didn't come to the combines, that maybe had some history of a knee problem. Well, you explored that knee problem before they step on the field and for rookie mini camps. Well, all those potential problems or pitfalls from an orthopedic standpoint, you still haven't figured out. And so you kind of know a little bit from talking to the players what their history is, and a little bit about what their history is from talking to some of their athletic trainers at their schools. But you could have somebody walking in with some knee ailment that could significantly affect their play and affect their performance, and you're just now kind of finding out about it. So, where we were able to kind of space things out over a few days of physicals, and they come back right in July and maybe just do a quick, hey, nothing's changed since May. Okay, great. Let's make sure you're still good to go. But now you're trying to do a full physical with lots of different tests, including all the COVID stuff, plus x-rays and MRIs. It puts a lot of strain on the system, and it puts a lot of stress on all the people trying to get the logistics of that done. Plus, you're also trying to keep people socially distanced. And so, you can't bring a bunch of people in and just have them waiting around in a room to come get a physical from the medicine doctor or the orthopedist. You kind of have to separate everybody and spread everybody out. So you're trying to really not keep much density of people in the same area, which is challenging. It is probably the biggest part about this is all the logistics that goes into it. I mean, everything from trying to put some distance in the locker room to how are you going to determine who's going to be in that tier 1 and tier 2 of 100 people that can potentially have close contact with the players. And there's a very finite amount of people that you can allow that to actually potentially come into contact with the players from when they walk in the facility, and everything from doctors to trainers to physical therapists to nutritionists to the owner to the GM. They have a set amount that the league and the NFLPA has agreed upon is, okay, these are the people that will be in the facility in and around the players, and not necessarily up right next to them, but they have the ability to be around in their basic general area. And it's very, very controlled.
Are the players all staying at one location during camp?
From years past, I mean, some players that are coming in, they stay at the team hotel. And some players live in New Orleans and go home. And so from what I understand is that the agreement is the players aren't going to be expected to stay at the team hotel. They'll be allowed to go to their home private residence. And, I think that's where some of, I guess, everybody's concern is. I mean, I'm going home and seeing my family and kids, and the more interactions we have with others is the problems of potentially spreading this. And so, we all have to kind of have an agreement and kind of an understanding to say, look, if we're going to make sure we have the least amount of COVID positives in our Saints organization, we all have to agree we're going to do the least to put ourselves in jeopardy or at least risk of exposure. And so that includes just interacting outside of the facility. And they're doing tons of stuff to try to minimize positive tests, but a lot of it has to do with what we do when we're outside of the facility. And that's not just me, it's the players, it's the coaches, it's everybody else. And you can see if one person kind of falls short of an understanding of what we need to do to socially distance, that it can really affect an organization.
Doc, now what about when they actually go through this week, the testing as you laid out, physicals, and then get on the field? What then becomes some of the biggest challenges?
Well, I think there's a couple things that go with that. I mean, there's still the logistics of testing everybody. And so every day for the first 2 weeks, based off of the agreement between the players and the league, every day, every person that's in that facility is getting tested with one of these nasal swabs. It feels like somebody's jamming something way up there, and not the most fun experience, but that's part of it. And they have a test ran off and making sure that you don't have anybody that's COVID negative, and assuming that nobody is, or assuming that everybody is healthy. The plan is to have I think it's a 2-week period of basically conditioning. I mean, I think, most of the time the orthopedists are worried about prevention of significant injuries and addressing those significant orthopedic injuries when they do occur. But if you haven't had players or athletes who've had access to normal strength and conditioning programs, you worry about somebody that's maybe not in as tip-top shape as they normally would be. And if they're not in great condition or if they're not in peak shape, that you could put them at a greater risk for some other injury. And so here you are, you're adding the COVID stress of just that, and then also the fact that, these guys haven't necessarily been able to go out and work out the same way they used to. I'm sure most of them have probably done everything they can to stay in the best shape, but we didn't have OTAs, we didn't have these mini camps, and that we need to make sure we're still not losing the sight on the idea that we need to try to prevent injury, and conditioning is a big part of that. So the first 2 weeks, and the agreement, maybe even longer, is a ramp up of basically conditioning and strength and conditioning. And then from there, moving into something almost a little bit like OTAs is my understanding. And so you're still having to test pretty regularly. And if the testing, it shows that we're not having a very big spike in COVID positive players and staff, then we can go to a less regular testing. But that's really dependent on how the first 2 weeks of testing and how things are going at that point.
Got it. So that's indefinite right now. So for the first 2 weeks, everybody gets tested every day for the first 2 weeks, and then subsequent to that, the testing may scale back. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah. I think if the total tests are less than 5% positive, I think that there's an agreement that they can go down to every other day. And I know for certain that if you're in the facility, you're getting tested every day. And you're in those tier 1 and players, and I believe even tier 2, you're getting tested every day. So, I mean, I'm not in the facility right now, but I'm having to test at, they call it the same cadence as the players. So I got a test yesterday, I got a test today, I'm off tomorrow, and I'll get another test tomorrow on Thursday, and then I'll get tested when I'm at the facility Friday and Saturday.
And so
it's
if all those are,
and then after that, it's basically every day.
Wow. Every day for those first 2 weeks, and then it could scale back to every other day. Is there a possibility where the testing could become even less frequent than every other day if things are progressing well?
I think that depends on not just our team, but what's happening across the league. And so I think if it really comes down to what the players in the league agree upon. I mean, I can't see a situation this year where testing isn't going to be a part of a weekly routine, and I have a hard time believing that it's going to be something that's a daily routine for the entire season. So it's probably going to be somewhere in between there. Is my speculation. I haven't spoken to anybody that's given me any details to confirm that up, but they've had a lot of doctors and infectious disease specialists and cardiologists and internal medicine doctors really working hard with both on the player side as well as the NFL side to really work through these and come to an agreement of trying to minimize risk as much as possible. And I can tell you that the chief medical officer of the NFL, a guy named Dr. Alan Sills, has really done a great job, I think, and wading through a really tough time. This is not, it's not like a regular off season for us. We've never had to deal with this before. And I think with the information at hand, I think the parties have done a great job. And I think also just understand that there's been some misconceptions, I think, about, hey, maybe the league's behind on this or they're kind of getting slow to the game. They've really been working on this for months and trying to, not only figure out what's going to be the best for the players, but also what's best for the staff, and the coaches, and making sure that we can all minimize our risk and keep everybody that's as healthy as possible. And look, this is a sport that's got risk like other sports. This is maybe in terms of contact sports, a higher risk sport, but this is just another added level of risk. And so are we risk free to begin with in this sport? No, but are we doing everything we can to mitigate and minimize the risk that comes with COVID? Absolutely. And I think that comes down to, again, where's the players' comfort level? How are we going to all work together to try to minimize that risk? And they really have done a good job, I think, of doing that. Well
said. I got two more for you. Dr. Chip Bankston is our guest, Saints team physician. Obviously, he's over there at the Baton Rouge Orthopedic Clinic here in Baton Rouge. You touched on this a bit, and I did want to go down this path. This is a non-COVID related question, but I mean, no OTAs, no mini camps. like, how much of a concern is there from your standpoint of the risk for other injuries because there haven't been consistent, however you want to term it, football related activities for these players?
Yeah, and I think that's why we've all just come to the point of saying, look, we need to just have a gradual ramp up. You can't just go straight into it. I mean, part of the agreement for the CBA that they recently had signed before all this was that there was more of a set buildup in terms of increase in volume and increase in intensity as we start camp. That was across the board. And so having that already built in, people already kind of were accepting of that. But now that buildup just needs to be longer. And I think the fact that we're all in agreement, we need at least 2 weeks of trying to get everybody in shape, and then even then there's still some buildup where there's not necessarily contact. I think that is a must, and sure we're worried about it. You have to expect that the players are going to come in pretty good shape, but they still, again, haven't had the access to all of just like everybody else, having to deal with gyms closed. You can't go out and work out with workout groups.
Mm-hmm.
That makes a difference. And so I think the main thing is getting everybody in, assessing how they are, what they're doing, make sure the least amount of COVID risk is out there, and then getting everybody in shape and ready for football. And certainly that's a worry for us. But I think the players union and the NFL have really thought through this well in terms of, look, we just got to have a slow build up. And I think there wasn't been enough from people from the medical staff, the trainers, the physical therapists that have just said, look, you can't just come in and expect camp to start as normal. It just is, it could be a really bad problem with injuries. And so, it could be a situation where, because the intensity level isn't going to be ramped up for a while, you may not see much in injuries early on. So I think that time will tell, but I think we got to do something to say, look, let's build up, and they've outlined that, I think, quite well.
I want to leave this open-ended for you. So I'm going to ask an intentionally vague question just because I think you'll just know where best to go with it. When you look at this season and the challenges presented, what are those significant challenges for your staff this entire football season?
Oh,
I told you it was vague.
I think the biggest challenges are, I have a hard time believing that we're going to be COVID free. I think there's going to be some situation where somebody's going to test positive despite all of our best efforts, and we're going to have to figure out what's not just best for this player, but what's best for everybody that's been around that player. And sometimes those are really tough decisions. And based off of the protocol, it's very clear, okay, if somebody's had a close contact with somebody that's COVID positive, even if the player that's been exposed with a close contact is asymptomatic, you may not have that player for a week and a half. And those aren't easy to hear from a team that's trying to compete at the highest level, but you also have to figure out, in the situation we're in, what's going to be the best, not just for the player that's positive, but all those people who are around that player, in the greater good of everybody's health. And the players are probably some of the most healthy people on earth for the most part, and it's also, you're dealing with some coaches and support staff that aren't necessarily young and healthy. You have some people that are in that tier 1, tier 2 that have medical problems and maybe have some risk factors. And so it's not just, again, for what's best for the player, it's also what's best for the organization that's there to take care of the players and making sure that everybody can be healthy. I think that's probably my biggest concern is what happens when somebody's positive. Because I don't think it's necessarily a matter of if. I think it's a when. And how do we respond to that? And how do we make sure we're doing what's right by the players? And I think if Bo was here, he'd tell you the same thing that he and I have tried to echo to players. Do what's right for the players. Do what's in their best. What's best for their health long term. And you do that, you're never going to go wrong. And I think as long as you keep that in mind, kind of also the other people around you that aren't necessarily players, I think you're going to make the right decisions.
He is Dr. Chip Bankston. He's the Saints team physician, orthopedist here at the Baton Rouge Orthopedic Clinic. I can't thank you enough for giving us so much of your time today. I know it's going to be an interesting path to travel. As some have said, you're building the bridge as you cross the river, but it'll be interesting to watch the construction as it goes on. Thanks for the time. We appreciate it.
Hey, man, my pleasure, Matt. Take care.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.